Hello there and welcome back. In this video, we're going to go over the shuffle node and start looking at how to manage multi-layer EXRs. So I have a setup in front of us here that's going to show us exactly how we can use the shuffle node. So let's make one really quick. We'll just type in shuffle. And by default, it's not going to do anything. And it's worth mentioning really quickly here that in Nuke 12.1, they revamped how the shuffle node interface looks a little bit. It has all the same basic functionality. They just revamped its interface so it's a little bit easier to use and visually understand what exactly is going on. If you're using the standard shuffle node from an earlier Nuke, you can still follow along. The functionality is the same. It's just a little visually different. So the shuffle node. What exactly is the shuffle node for? The shuffle node allows us to mix and match our various layers and channels in Nuke. We can expose underlying layers with image data and also feed data into those underlying layers or create new ones entirely. This is one of Nuke's greatest strengths, and it absolutely excels at managing this multi-layered data. It's so good, I love it, and there's so many things you can do with it. It's incredibly powerful. So before we get to talking about those multi-layered files, let's first talk about shuffling our channels within a single layer. Each of these connections here represents a channel input and a channel output. So you can see our RGBA.red input is going out to our RGB red output. And so we could actually just turn off our RGBA red. We'll click that here, and you'll see all of our red data goes to 0. There's no red anywhere in our image. Similarly, we could tell our RGBA.red data to go straight to white, and it adds red everywhere in our image. So let's go ahead and reconnect this so our red is red. I'd like to talk a little bit about this naming convention, because what we have here is a combination of the layer name and the underlying channel. In this instance, we have RGBA.red. RGBA is the layer, and .red is the specific channel within this layer. And what's the difference between channels and layers? Well, channels contain your image data. That's where the actual pixels are being stored. And then layers store channels within them. So they're really just a group of channels. Nuke's default layer is RGBA. That's what we've been working in this entire time during our class. And it contains, as we know, the red, green, blue, and alpha channels. And so as we look through our available layers, we can see that each channel has a unique name in relation to its layer. So let's just go ahead and reconnect this quickly by dragging there. That's a nice little shortcut as of Nuke 12.1. So we can use this not only to turn off and on our channels, but we can also mix and match the channels that we're using. So let's say we wanted our red channel input to drive all of our other channels. So what we can do is we can click and drag and connect. Now our red is going into our green input, our blue input, and our alpha channel. And so if we look at the values here, you can see that they're all the exact same as the red channel because that was the basis for the data. If we wanted to, we could also just expose our red data by turning off our other 3 channels. I'll go ahead and reconnect these 3 quickly so we can get back to our original image. Now this is certainly useful when you're just working with a single channel. You can see we just flipped our green and blue channels here by crossing these streams. Our green input is now feeding our blue, so this has turned blue, and our blue is now feeding our green, so that has turned green. And if we wanted to say, I want my alpha to be our red channel, we can go ahead and just connect that down here. Now if we look at our alpha, it's just where we had red. It's the exact same value. Oftentimes when you receive mats, they'll come in a red, green, and blue format, so you can have 3 mats in one image. And the shuffle node is how you get those colors into the alpha channel, just like this. You can see where red is 0.3, our alpha is 0.3. So that's the most basic usage of our shuffle node, but you can use it to do more than this. You can actually combine different layers from other pieces of footage. Let's go ahead and make a color wheel really quickly. This will just make this nice wheel for us. And we can actually connect this to our A pipe in our shuffle node. A quick announcement for our friends who are not using the Nuke 12.1 shuffle node. You will need to use a shuffle copy in order to do what we're about to do. In Nuke 12.1, they combined the shuffle copy and the shuffle into one node. And so you'll see right off the bat, this doesn't do anything. But we can say, I want to look at my A pipe, look at the RGBA layer, and you'll see it brings up all the channels within this associated layer. And we can take the red from this color wheel and put it in our current viewer. And now we can see we've replaced the red in input B with the red in color wheel 1. And so you can see if we just look at our red channel here, there's absolutely zero difference between these two. And this is a very powerful usage of the shuffle node. A very common use for this is, say we wanted to use this alpha, but we wanted to use this RGB. Well, we can just pipe our alpha channel in here and it has copied that over. Again, this is not pre-multiplied, and so we could add a pre-mult after it, and you can see we now have a pre-multiplied and ready to go image. I would say that copying over your alpha channel from input A into input B is the most common way to use the shuffle node when it comes to merging multiple inputs. But that's not the only reason the shuffle node exists. By far and large, the biggest use for it is when it comes to multi-layer EXR renders. Let's go ahead and just bring in an example from this week. So we have this EXR, and it contains multiple layers of RGB information for us to use. We can view these by clicking on this layer dropdown, and we can see all the layers that exist within this file. Let's go ahead and select RGBA back blue. And you can see now we're just viewing the RGB of just this layer. We can shuffle through any one of these to figure out exactly what is going on in all of our layers. And you can see these are a bunch of lighting passes. So how do we get this in our RGBA? Well, we'll make a shuffle node, and then we need to select the input layer that matches the data that we want. So in this case, let's grab the layer RGBA moon, and then it will output the moonlight.red into our RGBA.red. We're not in that channel, we're in our main RGBA channel. And this is the channel that we always want to use when we're rendering out our final product. And commonly when you do this, it will get rid of your alpha channel. And that's because if you look to our RGBA moon input layer, it actually doesn't have an alpha channel. So in this case, what we would want to do is also load in our B pipes RGBA channel and then pipe our alpha in. And now this will retain its original alpha. We'll go up and AB here just to prove that. And so there's just so much power in the shuffle node, and we're going to go into how we use it to combine multi-layered data throughout the rest of this course, and you're really going to see just how powerful it is. Now say you wanted to see all of the layers in your read node. We can use a layer contact sheet. And what this will do, we'll pipe it in here, and we'll select show layer names, and we'll be able to see all of the layers that exist within our current input. This will make it very easy to identify what you're looking for as you're shuffling your layers out. And multi-layer EXRs are at the bedrock of CG compositing. We use those to adjust lighting. We use them to adjust material properties, and we're going to get into that in the next video. Nuke's layering system is just so powerful, and we're going to see exactly how powerful it will be in the coming weeks. So let's move on and let's start talking about how exactly we can combine these layers together by talking about the material properties split out in our next video. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.